The views and opinions expressed in this video are those of the speakers and panelists, and do not necessarily reflect the position of the Ethos Institute for Public Christianity and its founding institutions and organizations.
Is Jesus God?
Migrant workers and human rights from a Christian perspective.
Marriage and family.
ISIS presents a much bigger threat.
How do we integrate the Bible with our scientific understanding?
Are you able to actually describe and articulate clearly your own sense of purpose in life?
Good morning. Now, within the broad topic of pop culture, I've chosen to focus on the self and social media this morning. What is men? When a friend of mine saw the title on the poster, his immediate response was not woman. Now, although the conference topic is not so gender specific, this is a lighthearted way to introduce the doctrine of anthropology. The distinguished speakers before me have expounded on this, so I'll just quickly discuss theological anthropology in light of our discussion with pop culture. Theological anthropology seeks to understand the mystery of humanity by reflecting theologically on ourselves. This is no easy task. Our ideas of ourselves will always be shaped by our own experiences and preoccupations, ethnicity, gender, nationality, and so on. We humans also possess a remarkable creativity and propensity to further complicate the conclusions we are pursuing by raising questions and creating more problems for ourselves. So what does the Bible say? We are hidden with Christ, and these verses in 1 John and Colossians, what we will be has not yet appeared, but we shall see Christ when he appears. So my emphasis, as I briefly go through this, in the interest of time, this must be the buzzword this morning, in the interest of time, that we have the life of Christ as our foundation for how a true human being should live. But we have yet to see how God's fully redeemed community looks in a sin-free world. In other words, the eschatological realization of God's purposes for us is still awaiting fulfillment. And in this sense, the task of theological anthropology is never complete. Hence, as we seek to understand the human person who participates in various activities of pop culture, we ought to remember that we are looking at fallen humanity. As relational beings, we first relate to God and then to other humans and creation. We are prone to shape or be shaped by others in our engagement with the world. And as social beings, our behavior is driven by our craving for togetherness and belonging. Let's remember this as we engage pop culture. So relationships with others impact our well-being. In the digital age, we may meet this inherent need to belong by participating in pop culture and soaking in its entertainment rather than building true, lasting relationship. The term pop culture brings with it varied responses, and I will not go into details this morning, but take a look at this. Any BTS fans out there? BTS. No, I'm not talking about Baptist Theological Seminary, where I'm teaching. Jin. BTS, Jungkook. And this is Dolby God MRT. I'm not sure if it's still there. If you're an army, you know what I mean by if you're an army. And if this is your bias, go take a photo. Now, if you think that pop culture is for the young, is participated by the young, no. BTS fans have die-hard fans over 80, 90 years old, and participants of pop culture come in all shapes and sizes and age, such as this elderly gentleman, Chen Sanyuan from Taiwan. He started with 10 sets of handphones to play Pokemon Go, the augmented reality game Yeah. If you play it, you know. And he escalated to this. Now, I have to tell you, in all your wows and woos and ahs, this is actually an older photo. I don't know how many he has been adding to his collection, and so much so that he's in this neighborhood. The neighbors and the police were all concerned about his safety, as you can see, and I don't have to explain why. So you can see pop culture's impact and influence through the lenses of these people in everyday life. So this raises a question: should Christians at least be willing to try to make sense of popular culture and the theological significance of the man at play? Now, to fully explore and grasp the underpinnings or dimensions of pop culture, it is impossible at 10 minutes in the interest of time. This 30 minutes, right? So I've extracted these two aspects, selfie and Instagram, these two aspects from my longer Ethos paper. And I will first run through what we mean by pop culture in the preliminary sense, and then I'll move on to our theological reflections, drawing on some theologians' works. Now, pop culture is usually contrasted with high culture. High culture denotes productions for the elite, by the elite. Think of Les Miserables concert, think of a Rachmaninoff concert, and think of Lady Gaga concert, right? Lady Gaga would be the mass culture that you talk about, the cultural products or expressions. And it's very difficult to pin down what pop culture is. So among all the definitions, I've chosen this. Ted Turner, who said pop culture is actually cultural works whose media, genres, or venues tend to be widespread and widely received in our everyday world. Widespread, widely received, every day. Now, this definition points to consumption practices that involve making meanings, constructing identities, and finding pleasures. What seems to set pop culture apart from high culture is that it is comparatively more affordable, readily available, and enjoyed without any prior skill set or knowledge. Now, technologies of mass distribution, such as social media, seem to have blurred the boundaries of high and pop culture today. For instance, this MOGS art group is a Warsaw quartet of male instrumentalists who infuse humorous theatrical acts into their classical music performance. I enjoy them. They play classical music, and halfway through, they will stand up and they do some impromptu performances, or they will just infuse some everyday theatrics to their performance, and all of a sudden, they will play some Elvis Presley music, and then back to classical music. So the boundaries of high culture, pop culture has been blurred. To complicate matters, critics often view pop culture through the lens of consumerism because it includes cultural activities and products such as entertainment, leisure, fashion, sports, and gadgets that are targeted for the commercial markets. Certainly, all people, you and I, consume pop culture. We consume pop culture, and we exhibit consumer behavior, just like patrons of other products. Now, because consumerism is often construed as a meta-narrative that lures us into a continual attempt to satisfy our longings, it characterizes people as consumers entangled in habitual purchasing to gain or maintain social status. This identification of pop culture with consumerism reinforces a negative view of pop culture. And with this, I move on quickly to social media, technology, and consumption. In the digital age, information, goods, and services, and social connection are available to us with a mouse click. This ease and convenience can shape us into people who become more impatient, discontent, and easily provoke into verbal skirmishes. I want it now. I send you a text, I want a reply, and I want it now, at the click of my finger. People in pre-industrialized societies produce many of their staple items at home. Some people in industrialized societies purchase manufactured goods to meet their needs. So we tend to be less aware, we today tend to be less aware that items have both functional and cultural values. Pleasures and meanings circulate along with goods and services. The consumer also produces pleasures and meanings as the use of stickers or emojis. I'm sure all of us have used this before when you don't feel like talking especially, and when your boss texts you, you just, do something. We have these emojis on WhatsApp, WeChat, Line, and so on. So in the cultural economy, these images replace or augment word text. By using them, we produce and circulate meanings in the constant meaning-making process that is called culture. Surely, this process requires a medium. The internet has become that medium by which these messages are shared with others. And the internet has developed and become easier to access today. The younger generation, like those sitting behind, and the young generation, like those sitting in front, found a new freedom to manipulate and construct online spaces as worlds for ourselves. Thus, any netizen, any person who visits the net could visit, inverted commas, places unreachable through other media. Now, at this point, it is useful for us to discuss briefly and to examine how internet users are simultaneously content producers and consumers. That is to say, let's look at the human person through a media lens. Consumerism attends to the ways that individual identity may be constructed through the purchase of goods, services, and experience, and the ways that corporate advertising campaigns may lure people into purchasing things that they don't need. In light of this, the lens of consumerism shows a one-dimensional picture. Producers, makers, or sellers of products brainwash us into making purchases we don't need. We, as recipients, are recipients of curated advertisement messages, and we consume passively. That is what consumerism tells us who we are. Really? And that is also how some of us think pop culture is. Really? This overlooks the fact that producers, makers, and sellers are simultaneously consumers. For example, the sellers who rely on technology and social media to market their products are also themselves consumers of that technology. Thus, we are consumers in a broader sense, and we are often selling, inverted commas, and buying, inverted commas, simultaneously, or in some scholars' terminology, we are users, and we are prosumers. The actions of producing, using, and consuming, these three areas converge in self-photography, or we call selfie. It is no exaggeration to say that selfie and video are the two spiritual symbols of this decade. They epitomize two widely held contemporary values, especially among the young: choice and entertainment. Social media creators can choose what they want to share and what they want others to see. With very rare exceptions, most visual images with added music are entertainment, stimulating our senses without challenging us to reflect more deeply about life. Let us now consider how the selfie shapes the user. Selfie is most often seen on Instagram. Ethos has an Instagram account. Instagram is a social network primarily for sharing images. As of July 2022, Instagram had more than 1.44 billion active users. Anyone can register an Instagram account and upload their photos, which are mostly shots of travel, journeys, food, and selfies. And users can alter their photographs to look ideal before sharing them. This practice implies that Instagram users are exposed to edited, idealized images. We commonly say Photoshop, Photoshop pictures. The edited, idealized images of those they follow and peers and celebrities. We see all these shots. What are the implications of adulterated Instagram photos? These may include the feel-good factor, selective perception, and inauthentic images. A person could display a vision of the good life and flourishing without actually living it. So it's all about feel good. It's a facade that I choose to show you, and I choose to show you what I want you to see. A selfie is not just about facial expressions, therefore, not about facial expressions juxtaposed in a particular background. It reflects how culture can dictate our perceptions of beauty. Today, photo editing apps in our cameras can make instant enhancement. For instance, there was a period of time when big eyes, and I really mean big, sharp chin, super sharp chin, and whitened, very white, white skin constituted the ideal face. And selfie takers can edit their photos on the camera or on their laptop before posting the pictures to match this standard, creating images that are inauthentic and staged. While all these poorly edited photos might make us laugh, distorted faces dehumanize people and misrepresent the imago Dei. In case you think why I'm so worked up, look at this. When I first saw this, I was taken aback. Therefore, I do not dare to put this picture as too big, in case it shocks you. Yes, that was in vogue. So people start to edit their images in such a manner, and you see that on social media. Now, echoing Susan Sontag's critical assessment that the photo turns people into objects that can be symbolically processed. French philosopher Roland Barthes, not Karl Barth, for a moment, let's take a breather. Roland Barthes says this. He reminds us that a photo is a construct of our perfect, idealized self. Barthes says it cannot satisfy the photo because it has gross limitations. A captured image is one among many millions of fluid photographs in numerous contexts. And as the subjects of these photos change with time, so photos can hardly portray the self that is aging and changing by the split second. While a picture may be worth 1,000 words, it does not do justice to the fullness of human life. Viewed this way, a photograph uploaded on Instagram or Facebook is but an object that we want others to see. Instagram encourages its users to capture memories because nostalgia. And in this case, digital nostalgia is an affective recollection and experience. Photography thus concretizes our human inherent longing for eternity. Now, whether of individuals or groups, selfies capture shared experiences within a unique social norm in which people find meaning. Thus, as a product of pop culture, selfie reflects shared social norms and imaginative structures. This cultural transmission is an important aspect of being human. Yet, the most compelling message of these medium images of the human in a fast-track modern life is this: they are yearning for human flourishing, which brings us to YouTube. Broadcast yourself. While Instagram is a rich repository of images, YouTube is predominantly a video platform. The contents vary from newsreels, interviews, music plays, unboxing handphones. Anyone, you watch that? I watch that all the time. sports highlights, movies, to self-help courses, and of course you have religious videos and sermons. YouTube is more than entertainment. Almost all of us here have had a dose of YouTube, and in reality, any of us could become a YouTuber. A YouTuber is a person who lives through posting images and earning a full-time living through YouTube. And on this media platform, we glimpse the worlds of other YouTubers who are not full-timers, who showcase slices of their lives, regardless of whether or not their postings earn an income. However, these videos also create myths bigger than reality. Take, for instance, a news event of a street protest that lasts for hours and even days. But the videos that are edited, it edits all the action into minutes. In this sense, YouTube video news is created and not reported. Videos, despite their dynamic sound effects, are non-verbal instruments. Once the sound is muted, the audience views Technicolor images in motion, not text. To some extent, words become irrelevant in most non-serious content videos, such as your 3 hours cat videos. Don't stone me, cat lovers. So words become irrelevant with all these videos. Images are the text. They comprise the narratives. Visuals are text. Because there is no quality control regulation on YouTube, content quality varies. So among all the clutter, you can find useful videos such as learning English, repairing your smartphone, cooking mee siam and laksa, and churches showcase their worship services and sermons, and faith organizations broadcast Bible study courses. There are good things on YouTube. Since its launch in 2005, YouTube's taglines has included "Dare to be you" and "Broadcast yourself," encouraging us to turn ourselves into products. Time magazine named their 2006 Person of the Year. It's not even a person, right? But Person of the Year, you. With YouTube credited as facilitating a global video sharing movement via online social networking. The magnitude of YouTube's impact is reflected in its statistics, which is indicated in March this year. More than 122 million people were watching more than 1 billion videos and uploading more than, now this is tough for me, 720,000 videos daily. Staggering statistics. Some commentators term, therefore, these social networks as me media because many cultivate an oversized self-esteem. People post their best videos to garner the most likes and subscriptions. You who watch YouTube, you will know almost every YouTuber will have this tagline: smash the like button. Like, subscribe, share. Smash the like button. If you really follow that instruction, you will have to change your laptop every 3 months. So while there are economic reasons to be a YouTuber with a large number of followers, generally the users of YouTube do not have real-life relationships with each other. I'm talking about online community. Okay? Instead, their brief communications in the form of comments below the video often display a kind of shallowness. Now, please understand, I'm not making a blanket comment on all YouTubers. Some have made meaningful relationships, but this is the general picture that I'm talking about. Now, certainly not all who upload their videos are narcissists on self-display. But there are those whose own disclosure of their private lives display a nuanced inner desire for affirmation through very superficial connection, such as the clicks on like, share, and subscribe buttons. One affirmation leads to craving for another, and that insatiable appetite soon reverses the you in YouTube to me, escalating into a repeated pattern of feeding one's ego in the name of hyper-connectivity. Drawing on my favorite, I shouldn't say favorite, right? Jacques Ellul says this: technology is constantly molding the unconscious with no possibility of resistance. The user, social media user, if he's not careful, will be engulfed in it, yet unaware of its control. The number of daily YouTube viewers reflect, actually, a fundamental human hunger for interpersonal connections and a sense of self as relational. Now, this is central to the Christian understanding of God as triune, for it implies that humans created in the image of God exist in mutual interdependence. Personal relationships are a vital part of how we reflect God's own being. I'll go on to our concerns and appropriate responses. While I do not advocate an uncritical, total embrace of all forms of pop culture, it is a useful tool for us to explore human longings. Instagram and YouTube are prominent spaces for gathering and bonding. These platforms provide spaces to forge relational connections with others through shared expressions of common interests. But still, I understand many Christians have reservations. What are we really afraid of? That Christians will be molded? That our dispositions, character, and values will be deformed from engaging pop culture? Is that what we are really afraid of? We have to understand, all human interaction shapes our dispositions, character, and values. We are equally vulnerable to forming habits through repeated exposure to abstractions such as ideas, and with material things such as gizmo, gadgets, as we are by repeated interactions with other human beings. Pop culture is not inherently bad, as I've noted. It contains a wide variety of content. But I do understand that at some point, some fundamental questions of idolatry, addiction, and even negative influences on our youth and children might be worrying us. We will always be consumers of something. We need to consider not only what is consumed, but how we can be more informed, mindful consumers in light of our theological reflection. Addiction and idolatry are problems of excessive and unrestrained consumption. Any excessive and unrestrained behavior is an outward sign of a disordered inner desire. In reflecting theologically on our interactions with pop culture, and in this final segment, I will consider how we can reorder these disordered desires coupled with a more robust doctrine of sin. Sarah Coakley's work on the Trinity proposes reimagining desire for God through a Trinitarian lens of contemplation. Coakley's proposal highlights an attitude of willingness to endure a form of naked dispossession before God, the willingness to surrender control, the willingness to accept the arid vacancy of simply waiting on God in prayer. All of us know God through experiencing Him as the one who cannot be contained or framed, while online activities are embedded into one specific captured human image. So Coakley argues that our primary desire is for God. Now, when this desire is misguided, it becomes disordered. Our human longing for meaning, sanctified pleasures, and communion with God will be turned inward and displaced by self-seeking desire. And this is exactly what Gerard May said, displacement of spiritual longing. Situating Coakley's practice of contemplation in the context of the human who is the nexus of selfie and video activities means this: parting with the gadgets and gizmo and leaving the WWW, Wild Wild Web, to wait upon God in meditative prayer. It is a radical reordering of the self-possessed person's desire and heart, and rechanneling that desire back to its divine source. The disordered and displaced heart that is bent inward into sin and self-absorption, the homo incovetous in se, must be bent outward to properly intersect with God. St. Augustine asserted that human beings are inherently inclined to love. We are all inclined to love. We are all by nature desiring creatures. Our problem is this: our disordered primary love. Instead of aligning our desires towards God and delighting in the world as gifts from God, we draw our desires toward ourselves and delight in the gift themselves instead. So as a result, self-indulgence takes root and acts of a self-referencing yardstick for all objects of our desire. We become independent of God. This is exactly what Augustine means by concupiscentia. Once we have such disordered desire, all people and things of this world are means to satisfy a self-loving and self-indulging end. Though it is not always immediately apparent, this excessive self-love finds itself extending toward idolatry. Not in a manner of focusing on oneself, but instead in finding forms. We need to find forms and degrees of satisfaction to pacify the inner insatiable longing and ego. Now here, Jean-Luc Marion's analytical framework of idol and icon helpfully extends Augustine's concept. Listen to how Marion describes the essence of idolatry. I've shortened it. The gaze makes the idol, not the idol the gaze. The gaze precedes the idol because an aim precedes and gives rise to that at which it aims. The first intention aims at the divine. We all try to aim at the divine, actually. And the gaze restrains itself to see the divine by taking it up into the field of the gazeable. Here, gaze is more than just sight. It is an outward, expressive, intentional act of an inward desire to know, to understand, and to control the object of our gaze. So Marion argues that rather than the object becoming an idol, since its function is just a landing place for our gaze, it is our desire embedded at the very act of gazing that expresses our human longing for the otherwise invisible God. Two important considerations arise here in relation to idolatry. First, anything can be an idol, which we are often told, as Paul explicates in Romans. And thus, when that happens, the subject or idolater jettison a proper vision of God, replacing it with self-generating desire and projection of an image of God onto materiality. And this brings us to the second point, which is erroneous perception results in futile attentiveness. Often, an inability to gaze upon and worship God reflects our human failure to thwart distractions that are a catalyst to replacing the incorruptible God with idolatry. Attentiveness is originally meant to be directed towards God, but now it is directed towards objects or images that we can control. The real issue here is this: the underlying disordered desire to control and manipulate in the same manner that one decides upon the object of the gaze. And this is what Rowan Williams says: we desire the closure of our own desire. What he's actually saying is that we are created unfinished, but we try to end that by our own human efforts, and that's the crux of the human error. We are created unfinished so that our deepest longing will seek its end in God. Such is our human condition. If this goes unrecognized, we will hanker after and be distracted by our own attempts to quiet our own ontological restlessness and find solutions within our own existential angst. Finally, we come to this last slide, a robust doctrine of sin. So, can we look at pop culture as an interpretive discourse on the human need for self-expression and yearning for responses on social media platforms? Can we consider those as human expressed concerns regarding the meaning of life and hence their attempt of orientation towards the Creator? Now, if we regard culture as something that we made, our artistic endeavor with God's creation, God's resources, then a sound theology of pop culture sees variables of pop culture as opportune and appropriate spaces for the gospel message. Christians, instead of being passive consumers of pop culture, then can take the initiative to be the mediators of truth, goodness, and beauty. So, returning to my earlier question regarding our fears of the possible sinful and evil influence of some pop cultural forms on our youths and children, I suggest that the proper response is not withdrawal from pop culture, but a more robust theology of sin. Withdrawing from cultural forms as a way to avoid contamination really is to reify sin and evil by giving them a tangible locality, as if sin can be given a boundary. This suggests that sin can easily be recognized and avoided. It also suggests that purity is the avoidance of unquestionable content. This is an impoverished understanding of sin because it gives human beings too much trust in our ability to work out a solution, while at the same time, it underestimates the nature and profundity of sin. Well, the Apostle Paul has told us and spoken of his experience, how he wrestled within himself in Romans 7. The law of sin waged him and tormented him. And he said this, his theology of sin is robust. He said that he is convinced the only way is to come to God. God, through Jesus Christ, can save him. In conclusion, I've by no means exhausted all the characteristics of pop culture and the ways in which theology and pop culture intersect. But I hope this opens a door to further studies that venture beyond a narrow view that all pop culture is bad. What should we as Christians do? What should our Christians' response be? I just would like to just suggest, as a suggestion, no doubt, rather than seeing these social media communities as consumer groups detached from the larger society, our view ought to be more panoramic in two ways. First, the online communities are not exhaustive but inclusive. They remain open to us. The question is, what sort of social media participants do we as Christians perceive ourselves to be? Do we participate to understand and interact, or do we join just to offer a shrill condemnation of others? Second, and with this I end, in light of how we see ourselves as a faith community, there is already an inherent exclusivity and segregation of others who do not meet our requirements. We always view others as different from us, even as binary opposites. As we engage people in the Instagram and YouTube worlds, we need to develop a more robust doctrine of sin and to understand how we can help or how we can suggest to these people what a disordered desire is. To speak the language, to dialogue redemptively with them. Such mutual enrichment is much needed in our times. Such communication is also the useful evangelical tool that aids us in dialogue with our very own younger generation of pop-cultured geeks who are much more media savvy than us. And with that, I end. Thank you.